Okay, so let's set the scene. Imagine you're in New York City, right outside the Ed Sullivan Theater.
Yeah.
The air is just uh, electric. Our sources are saying ticket requests for this one night completely off the charts, broke records.
Wow.
And everyone knew why. This wasn't just, another taping. This was like a scheduled collision, a showdown everyone was waiting for. Conservatives, liberals, didn't matter.
That's right. And this deep dive, we're really getting into the source material that covers that whole explosive interview, Karoline Leavitt versus Stephen Colbert. We've gathered the reports, the analysis, the key quotes, everything you need to really get what happened.
But not just what happened, right? More
Yeah.
like what it all means for, well, for politics right now.
Exactly, what it reveals.
So the key players here. On one side, Karoline Leavitt,
Yeah.
27 years old, youngest White House press secretary ever. And the sources paint her as this really modern figure.
Told to redefine the job.
Right. Gen Z style, super loyal to Trump, using TikTok from the White House, building this huge following. And that catchphrase.
No cap became a thing.
Yeah, no cap. She came in during the re-election campaign, brought this youth energy, and then after they won, she really became like the administration's shield and sword,
Yeah.
defending all those controversial policies.
And facing her, Stephen Colbert, the king of late-night political comedy. His whole brand is built on criticizing the Trump administration, among others.
And the sources pointed out, leading up to it, Colbert specifically promised a real conversation. He even added, pointedly, not a TikTok performance.
Ouch. So yeah, you had this like veteran media guy versus this completely new kind of political operator. The stage was definitely set.
Absolutely. So our mission here is to take you deep into the arguments, the dynamics, the real feel of this clash. We want to understand what each side was about, their strategies, how they handled it, all based on the sources we've been digging through. Let's get into it.
Okay, so let's start even before they sat down, outside the theater.
Yeah.
Because the sources paint a really vivid picture.
Right, the crowds.
Huge crowds gathered for hours, police barriers separating them. You had Manji hats on one side, Colbert fans on the other. The tension wasn't just inside. It was right there on the street, like a mini version of the whole country.
And then Leavitt shows up. The sources really zero in on how she carried herself, what she wore.
Yeah, they talk about this practiced confidence walking into that charged atmosphere. And her outfit gets mentioned specifically.
The blazer, right, but over a band t-shirt.
Exactly. Structured black blazer, vintage band tee, high-waisted jeans, white sneakers. It's described as this, like, deliberate mix. Authority, but also Gen Z style. She steps out, and the noise is just immense. Applause, but also really loud boos. You could hear both clearly.
That mixed reaction tells you a lot right there. She knew what she was walking into. So Colbert greets her, smiles at first, quick handshake, but then...
Then they sit down, and the sources say the smiles kind of vanish. Both lean forward a bit. You could just feel the tension build. The audience got quiet, waiting.
And Colbert just dives right in. According to the sources, first question is about her age and her job. Points out she's 27, youngest ever, and asks if working for Trump felt like babysitting someone who refuses to grow up.
Whoa. And the audience.
Big reaction. Sources say a lot of laughter, applause, definitely playing to his crowd there. Classic Colbert opening move, using humor to land a punch, frame her as just a handler.
Trying to get her off balance immediately.
Yeah.
But she didn't bite on the babysitting thing?
Nope. Sources say she didn't flinch, smiled calmly, looked right at him, and just coolly replied, she doesn't babysit. She works with the GOAT.
Using GOAT, greatest of all time.
Right then and there. Said she was proud to help get his message out, and then she specifically mentioned using no cap.
Wow. Okay, using GOAT and no cap in her first answer on that stage. What's the strategy there, according to the sources?
It seems like she's just fully embracing her online persona, bringing it straight into this old media setting, not trying to fit the mold. She's using her identity. And that GOAT line, straight up loyalty signal, countering his negative framing right away.
Bold. And the sources say some Trump supporters in the audience actually applauded that.
Yeah, scattered applause. It definitely landed with her base in the room.
Okay, so after that first exchange, where does Colbert go? Sources say he shifts to policy, the Canada tariffs.
Yep, exactly. He brings up her past comments about Canada being on its knees because of Trump's tariffs, and he challenges her directly. Is that diplomacy, or is humiliating allies just, a bonus?
Okay, so accusing her of being undiplomatic, maybe even malicious, how does she respond?
She pivots immediately. Sources highlight this. She's like, okay, if you want to talk economics, let's do that. She frames the tariffs purely as economic leverage. points out Canada's dependence on the U.S. market.
So making it about strategy, not insults.
Right. Her argument, based on the reports, is basically sometimes you got to play tough to get what you want. The administration isn't trying to win popularity contests. It's about winning for America. And then she drops it again.
No cap.
No cap. She really owns that phrase, so she reframes it. It's not about being mean. It's about being effective. We're here to win. Clear message. And Colbert apparently repeated no cap back at her, almost like trying it out.
Interesting. Okay, so from tariffs, where next? Media seems like a flashpoint.
Big time. Colbert challenges the decision to ban outlets like AP and Reuters from some cabinet meetings. He asks point blank, isn't this silencing the press? How is that a win for democracy?
That's a tough question for any press secretary. You'd normally expect some defense of press freedom, right?
You would, but the sources say Leavitt went a totally different way.
How so?
She pushes back, hard, sits up straighter, expression sharpens. Her argument, as reported, is they weren't silencing anyone. They were managing access because, in her view, those outlets consistently push narratives instead of reporting facts.
Okay, that's a direct shot at the media outlets.
Absolutely. She argues Americans have lost faith in traditional media, including Colbert's show, because of bias. So, filtering access is needed to get the administration's message out clean, without distortion.
And this is where she uses that phrase.
The vibe check, yep. Sources say she calls it a vibe check for journalists who've forgotten their job.
A vibe check for journalists.
Hmm.
Wow. How did Colbert react to that?
He laughs, but sources say it wasn't exactly a warm laugh. He calls it creative, but basically says it's just spin for controlling the narrative. Argues press freedom shouldn't be filtered like, and this is a direct quote, Instagram comments.
Ooh, the Instagram comment line. That's clearly a dig at her, right?
Yeah.
Linking her style to something trivial.
Totally. Trying to diminish her approach. But does she back down?
Not at all. She questions if Colbert is stuck in 1990, dismissing his whole framing. She argues Americans trust them because they see results, jobs, growth, peace deals. Says Trump doesn't need validation from legacy media, and neither does she.
And she points to their own channels.
Yeah, she talks about their massive reach on X, on TikTok, mentions her own 728,000 followers as proof they can talk directly to people. No need for the middleman.
So essentially, we don't need you or your journalist buddies. We've got our own audience, and they trust us, not you.
Exactly. She calls it cutting out an outdated middleman who wasn't doing their job anyway. This whole exchange really shows that shift. The sources talk about who controls political communication now. It's not just defending the policy. It's attacking the legitimacy of the traditional press.
The sources say the tension in the studio is sky high here, audience reactions all over the place, and then Colbert seems to shift gears, drops the jokes, gets really serious.
Yeah, this is where it becomes a straight-up ideological fight. He looks right at her and accuses her of being complicit in undermining American democracy.
Oh.
Complicit. And he adds, accusing her of selling out her generation, turning Gen Z into a marketing tool for Trump's agenda of tearing down checks and balances.
The sources say those words just hung in the air. Landed like a grenade, one report said. And this is where her cool composure cracks. Just for a second.
Just a flicker. Sources mention her eyes flashed with real anger before she immediately got it back under control. But the audience reaction was huge gasps, shouting, people yelling support, others yelling disagreement, a very raw moment.
And she hits back just as hard.
Absolutely. She reportedly calls Colbert's hypocrisy stunning, accuses him of sitting in his millionaire's chair, profiting from the division he complains about. She argues Trump saved America from the mess your friends left behind, and she's proud to stand with him.
And she uses her personal story here too, doesn't she?
Yes, brings up growing up in New Hampshire, parents with a small business, no special connections, no privilege. It's a key part of her argument. She's saying, I know what real Americans want, a strong country looking out for itself, and Trump gets that done.
And she flips his accusation back at him.
Directly. She says, quote, you call that selling out, I call it winning. No cap.
Wow. Using her background to claim authenticity, connect with ordinary people, contrasting it with his perceived elite status, and then ending with no cap again, doubling down.
Exactly. It's all about redefining the terms.
Yeah.
His selling out becomes her winning.
Yeah.
And her personal story backs it up. She's controlling her narrative.
Colbert seems a bit thrown by that intensity, but he keeps pushing. Frames it as building a regime, asks if Gen Z really wants their future traded for, like, social media points.
He's trying to make her actions seem not just wrong, but dangerous for her own generation and for the country's future. But Leavitt just dismisses regime as, like, ridiculous.
Right, she says she's building a future.
A better future. Argues Gen Z wants real things, jobs, security, respect for the nation, not lectures. Claims Trump ends wars, brings prosperity, strengthens America. Says she's helping tear down a broken system that failed regular folks for years.
And then there's that moment the sources mention where her tone changes, becomes softer, more personal.
Yeah, she pauses. And then talks about being a mother. Mentions giving birth just days after the assassination attempt on Trump the year before and going back to work almost right away. Says she does it all for her child's future, not for applause.
And the sources note this really shifted the mood. Even some critics seemed quieted by it. Why do you think that landed so hard?
Well, it's just very humanizing, isn't it? It cuts through the political spin for a second. It shows a personal motivation. It's harder to just call someone a puppet when they talk about working for their kid's future. It adds this layer of maybe authenticity or sacrifice that hits differently than just policy talk.
Definitely. So after that, Colbert changes tack again, moves to foreign policy specifics, the Russia-Ukraine peace deal.
Right. And he frames it as straight-up appeasement. Points out Ukraine lost territory, Russia faced few consequences, Putin claimed victory. He asks her, how is that a win for American leadership?
And Leavitt's reaction.
Expression hardens again, reportedly. Pushes back immediately on his framing. Her defense, according to sources, is that the deal stopped a bloody war the last administration couldn't fix, just kept escalating. She argues Trump got both sides of the table. Yeah, compromises are made, but the killing stopped. That's leadership, she says, not weakness.
And she ties it back to results, American interests.
Yes. Frames the war as draining U.S. money, messing up markets, says Trump fixed a problem others just watched get worse. And then she adds another jab at the media.
Oh, what's that?
Suggests Colbert and his media friends are just mad they can't keep pushing war stories for ratings while regular Americans wanted peace, and Trump delivered it.
It's that consistent theme, again, framing any criticism as biased or out of touch, not legitimate. So Colbert then tries to corner her on consistency. Okay, tariffs putting Canada on its knees is a win because of leverage, but compromising with Russia, where territory was lost, that's also a brilliant strategy. How does that work?
And sources say she had an answer ready. It says the difference is the type of leverage and the situation. Economic pressure works one way with Canada, a trading partner. Russia-Ukraine is a whole different military and geopolitical ballgame.
So different tools for different jobs.
Pretty much. She argues Trump saw an endless proxy war wasn't helping the U.S., so he found a way to make peace. Calls it smart leadership, being flexible, not inconsistent.
Okay, so she frames it as strategic adaptation. As they're wrapping up, Colbert goes for what feels like a final, really personal shot. Asks if she worries she's just Trump's puppet, just a pretty Gen Z face, hiding policies, never deviating, even with contradictions.
That's rough. Questions her independence. Her intellect reduces her to just an image. Sources say the studio went dead silent.
And Leavitt's response to being called a puppet.
She stares him down for a beat, sources say, then gives this smile, described as colder, more determined, calls it the lowest blow, and says she won't let it slide, directly confronts it, declares she's not a puppet. She's the voice for an administration working for Americans, forgotten by elites like you. Says she has her own mind, her own principles, and they align with Trump's.
And she leans in, reframes the whole puppet thing into something positive about herself.
Exactly. Declares consistency isn't being a puppet, it's loyalty and conviction. Slams politicians who flip-flop with the polls. Says Americans are sick of that. They want leaders who mean what they say.
Her voice apparently got stronger here. Said she chose this path, believes in the jobs, the peace, the strength they're building, calls that integrity. Sources say this got the biggest applause of the night from the conservative side of the audience. Even some critics seemed impressed by just her sheer resolve there.
Colbert tries one last thing. Asks if she ever tells Trump he's wrong. Her answer.
Doesn't break eye contact, reportedly. Says her job is to communicate the president's vision. Disagreements, they happen behind closed doors, not for your entertainment. Adds that Trump values loyalty and honesty, and she wouldn't have the job if he didn't trust her to give it to him straight.
And then sources say she stands up, basically ends the interview herself. Her final words are described as really defiant.
Yeah, makes it clear she won't be intimidated, won't crumble. Says Gen Z and Trump are reshaping America, and late night jokes won't change that. And then that final line.
We win, you lose, deal with it.
Stark. Unapologetic. Then she extends her hand, Colbert stands, they shake. Sources noted maybe a flicker of grudging respect from Colbert, even though he looked frustrated. As he wrapped up, the audience just erupted, half cheering, half booing. divided right down the middle.
And the immediate aftermath confirms just how big this was. Social media just blew up. Karoline versus Colbert trending worldwide, clips going viral instantly.
Conservative media reaction was fast. Pretty much declared her the winner, praised her composure, her defense. One headline was reportedly, Karoline crushes Colbert.
Meanwhile, liberal outlets focused on the media restrictions, the Russia deal, called her Trump's Gen Z shield, questioned her Democratic commitment. But importantly, even critical sources acknowledged she was formidable, unflappable under fire, great at controlling the message.
Political analysts across the board really saw it as a huge moment, symbolizing those deep divides, generational, ideological. A CNN analyst reportedly said, love her or hate her, Leavitt showed why she's effective. She speaks Trump's language, but packages it for a younger crowd.
And her actions right after totally reinforced her image. That vibe check complete post on X with a photo walking off stage. Hundreds of thousands of likes, boom, message sent, victory lap. Next morning at the briefing, totally calm. It just said, quote, I said what needed saying. Now let's get back to the real work.
Okay, so pulling back from the blow-by-blow, what does this whole thing, based on these sources, really tell us about American politics right now? What's the bigger picture?
Well, it highlights a few key things, I think. One, traditional media, maybe not the only gatekeeper anymore. Social media is a central battlefield. Two, generational identity in politics, clearly a major factor now. Three, the ideological gap is just vast. This wasn't really a debate. It was more like two different realities colliding.
And it shows how political communication itself is changing, right? That Gen Z style, the focus on perceived authenticity, that unwavering conviction, those seem like really powerful weapons in today's climate.
And maybe the biggest thing the sources suggest, Leavitt's skill wasn't just deflecting criticism. It was counterattacking and imposing her own narrative, even when things seemed contradictory. She refused to be defensive, always circled back to loyalty, results, fighting for the forgotten Americans. That seemed key to her effectiveness.
She told her story, stuck to her message or her principles, depending how you see it, and just wouldn't let Colbert define the terms.
Right. It kind of suggests that in politics today, maybe winning isn't always about having the most detailed policy paper. Maybe it's about who stays most firmly rooted in their conviction, connects best with their chosen audience, and refuses to be knocked off message by criticism.
So looking back at everything the sources describe, this wasn't just an interview. It was like a staged, but still incredibly real clash of visions for America, competing ways of talking, competing ideas about what loyalty and authenticity even mean in politics today.
Yeah, you had policy talk, sure, but underneath it all, it felt like a battle over who gets to write the story, who speaks for real people, and what leadership or even democracy looks like in 2025.
It definitely leaves you thinking, doesn't it? In this age where information is everywhere and trust in institutions is so shaky, what does a clash like this tell you about whose version of truth actually gains ground? And what tools, what communication styles are really the most powerful now for shaping how people see the world? Something to chew on next time you watch the political sparks fly.